All right, and we are live. Mike, how you doing, man?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Doing
That's
well. How
good.
about
Well,
you,
thank
Mike?
you
How you
so much.
feeling? Feeling
I'm
better?
feeling a little better. I go back to the doctor this Wednesday to the GI doctor. They don't know what's going on, but it comes in spells, and thank God. But the last 3 days, I've felt a lot better.
Good.
But
Good.
hopefully we'll get it figured out. It has been rough. But
Well,
other than that, how about yourself? How are you?
doing all right. I'm doing all right. I'm working hard. I'm waiting to hear about my next book. I started writing it, and then the publisher basically pulled the rug out from under me and said he wasn't going to buy any more books any longer. So never signed my contract, and so I'm waiting now. I got a book agent taking it out to the marketplace to see if I can get it sold. So I'm kind of in between gigs at this point.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Wow.
but the Fallen Angel 3 will be out on Thursday, and we've got a release party set up in Manhattan. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's awesome. But did you have a
Yeah.
venue you rented out or?
Yeah, yeah. The place is called. No, I didn't rent it out. I don't have to. It's a bookstore
Uh,
called the Mysterious Bookshop, and I've done every book I've ever done. We've had a release party there. They host it. They actually serve wine and beer and host it for it's about an hour, a little over an hour, and they sell books. I go there a little early, sign a bunch, and they also have pre-orders that they take care of as well because they've had the announcement out for about 2 weeks now in terms of the party. So it's good. I hope people show up to tell you the truth. So I send out
oh,
a
I'm
lot of
sure they will.
yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
That's awesome.
So that's it. It's it, which is
That's
the book we're
awesome.
going to talk about tonight. Book
Yeah.
3 of my Fallen Angel series. So
Yes, I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued. I was excited when you reached out to me and told me about this project you have coming up. So, yeah, that's what brings us here today.
yep, yep, yep. So I don't think we've ever spoken about this before. I think
No, we
we've
haven't.
mentioned. Okay, so this is book 3 in a series that I call Fallen Angel, a true crime fantasy. And basically, the reason for that is that all of the crimes that occur in the crime novel are cases that I did myself. I handled them when I was in the DA's office, and I've adapted them to the scenario of the overall arching story in the book, in the series, which is this, and I should explain it to your listeners and to your viewers. The For a long time, I was writing books with a friend of mine who passed away, and the last book we did together was one we actually talked about. Homicide is My Business, about Luigi the Zip, the hitman from Sicily, um, who came to Brooklyn and got hooked up with the Bonanno family and was doing uh, murders here in Brooklyn after having done several in Sicily and Italy, etc. So that was the last book that I did with my friend Jerry Schmetterer. When I finished it, I said to myself, "What am I going to do now?" He ultimately passed away, which is the reason why I had to say that and think about that. And I had this idea of doing a book of short stories. I have a lot of stories, obviously, over my career, and all true crime shows short stories. And I pitched it to two book agents who I had worked with before, who sold books for me, and they both had the same answer that a book of short stories, true crime short stories, was hard sell. That true crime aficionados, true crime fans want to see a long form story, beginning, middle, end, that kind of thing. So one of them said to me, "Look, if you could tie all your short stories together in some format, you might that might sell." So I had this idea, and I'll tell you about this. This is the reason why I did it this way. I tried a case back when I returned to the DA's office a long time ago now, 1992. It was a case involving a young Hasidic Jewish girl. I think she was 13 years old, who would walk a bridge between Brooklyn and Manhattan, the Williamsburg Bridge. generally on Sunday mornings for exercise. And this particular Sunday morning, she was walking the bridge and was set upon by a junkie, a guy who had been waiting up there on the footpath to the bridge for someone like her. He figured she had money, and he tried to rob her. And she had nothing on her. She was up there for exercise. And he was so pissed at her that he dragged her by her scarf down from this pathway, this footpath, to a very remote part of the bridge and strangled her to death. Killed her, just strangled her with her own scarf. That wasn't
Unbelievable.
enough for him. He then stripped her of all of her clothing, put it off to the side, and then violated her with his hands and fingers to make it seem as if it was a sex crime. That wasn't enough. That night, he went back with someone else and doused her with gasoline and set her on fire and burnt her body beyond recognition. And in my summation at the trial, I said this to the jury, that the only thing we had left of her was one shoe, and her bra clasp survived the fire. And it was a case that was, I mean, just a horrific case. It really set this Hasidic Jewish community in Brooklyn on its ear. And so I was given the case to try when I came back, and I read the whole case, read all the police files, and a thought struck me when I was preparing my summation, and it was, and what I said to the jury was, this was such a horrific crime, one that, you can't even. I don't think a fiction writer could make it up. It was as if the devil had come to Brooklyn and done this to this young woman. That stuck with me, Mike. Stuck with me forever. And when they asked me, the book agent suggested that I tie together all of my short stories. The idea came to me that, what if I were to write a story where the devil does come to Brooklyn, and it's recognized that he is behind some horrific crimes, one of which is this one, and he has been doing it in other parts of the United States and throughout the world and been successful. Why? Because when he sets up his stooge to commit the crime, he then goes about sabotaging the trial and the case itself, the investigation and the case, so that the bad guy gets off and he wins. So the whole idea is that a priest in the Vatican's Office of Exorcisms in New York, studying this pattern of these horrific crimes, recognized that they all they all preceded a satanic exorcism by the people who committed these crimes. And he realized that, it seems as if the devil has come to Brooklyn now, and they goes to the Vatican goes to the United States, they speak to the Attorney General, and they come up with this plan to hire and to engage prosecutors in the various jurisdictions that Satan may appear, this time in Brooklyn, who have the guts and the wherewithal and the intelligence and the experience to take on the ultimate evil. And they have a committee, a secret committee, because they can't let this out, that they believe the devil is actually operating in the confines of Brooklyn. So It's a secret proceeding, and one of the people on the committee is a priest who was part of the exorcism, the Office of Exorcisms, and he was born in Brooklyn, and they take him on as an expert in the borough, and ask him to find a prosecutor who can do this. And it just so happens that he grew up with the chief of the rackets division in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, a guy named Michael Gioca. And he knows Gioca's been successful, and Gioca has all of the qualities that are necessary to beat the devil. And they engage Gioca. He is a little uncertain as to whether or not he wants to take the job, but he ultimately does. So that's the setup. And book one has four stories. They're all linked together, but all four separate cases in which the devil has instigated these horrific crimes. and the one that I just talked to you about, the young Jewish woman on the Williamsburg Bridge, is I believe the last case in the book, in that particular book. Now, when I approached, I took this to a guess a publisher that I knew from actually having appeared on TV shows that she has here in New York and on Long Island. She wanted me on when I had the other books, the ones that you and I talked about. And
Sure.
so I got to know her. So I sent her a proposal. Actually, I went to see her. I met her at her office, and I brought the proposal with me. And I talked to her about it, just what I said to you. And she said, give me a couple of days. Let me see what I can do. So I get a call back from her. It was about, I guess, less than a week later. And she said to me, Mike, my editors love this. And, but I tell you what, we don't want you to do just one book. We want you to do a series. We want you to do 3 books, because I had so many stories, Mike, that I really couldn't end it with just, talking about the 4 crimes. So book
I
one,
100% believe that, Mike.
yeah.
You got some
Well,
stories.
if you were in my apartment right now and turn to my left or your right, you
Yeah.
would see boxfuls of boxes, and they're file boxes of
Uh,
reports and cases and my old
just
summations.
like you see on the ID channel, the
Yeah,
book, the boxes and the crates of the files and
yeah,
all the case
exactly.
stuff. I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So book one was book one. I sent it to my agent also out in Hollywood, and he loved it. He loved it, and he engaged a screenwriter who wrote a pilot. And the pilot, I got to tell you, Mike, when the screenwriter read the pilot to myself, and my wife was listening to it at the same time, the hair on the back of our neck stood up, because it was really, he really made it eerie, more eerie even than the book itself. And then unfortunately, and they had sent it out and people loved it. And then you know what happened? The writers' strike in Hollywood happened. This was about a year and a half ago, and it stalled in terms of selling it. So
If you
uh,
don't mind, Mike, what
yeah,
I'm not too familiar with that. The writer's strike.
well,
What really happened?
well, all
No
the,
writers in Hollywood for scripted shows and or
correct.
books or
They went,
anything.
correct. They went on strike, and the reason they went on strike is they feared that AI would take over and that they would lose their jobs, and they wanted a new contract with the studios that protected them from having AI take over their work.
No
And to,
shit, I didn't
oh
know
yeah,
that.
yeah, and to follow up on that, the actors went on strike. The Screen Actors Guild went on strike. So I, at that point, lost the ability to. And by the way, Mike, nothing happened in Hollywood during that almost a year. Nothing, no negotiations, no talks. Nobody would speak to anybody because they were feared, to offend somebody. So my agent was basically stuck. He couldn't do anything. So now he's in the process of taking it back out into the marketplace to see if he can sell it. And in the meantime, I have written 2 more books in the series. Book 2 came out last year, around this time last year, and then I guess I wrote book 2 during COVID, quite frankly, partially during COVID, and and then I did book 3 this year, and what I did was in order, you see, I have never written, I never wrote true crime novels before. All of my books have been true crime, and what helped me was I had the imagination to take a case that I actually did and transform it into a crime that the devil instigated for a reason. And the reason, for the most part, was to affect life in Brooklyn, to upend life in Brooklyn, to really bring fear to residents that that there was this horrific, not necessarily a force, but that the crimes that were happening, that were affecting their life, were going to continue to happen. I have deaths, murders of police officers, firefighters, um, this young woman who was killed because she was Jewish. So I have an attack on several religions in and about, in these books. So so that as far as book two is concerned, I continued book one. I found a way to hook it in so that it would just be kind of a seamless transition into now four new stories, but four new stories all connected to the devil. And now Michael Gioka is not he doesn't escape unscathed in these cases. Things happen, and for instance, in book one of the cases is the killing of an off-duty police officer for no reason. I mean, I'm sorry, not that one. That was a off-duty police officer who was robbed by a fellow who needed money to bail his girlfriend out of jail. And he had no way of, and this is a true story. I did this case. He had no way of doing it, so he wanted to hold. He went to it was July 4th, believe it or not. He had an idea of going into a grocery store / candy store in Brooklyn and holding it up. Very popular location. And when he got there, it was packed with people. So he knew that wasn't going to work. So he sat on a curb and thought about this and didn't know what to do. And suddenly his prayers were answered, so to speak. A guy and his girlfriend, an off-duty cop and his girlfriend, rode up to this bodega. They were on their way to Manhattan to go to a club for 4th of July party. It was a brand new motorcycle. The guy was dressed to the nines. So was the girl. And they walk into the store. She walks in, and in real life, the thief sets upon the motorcycle rider and pulls out a gun, says, give me the motorcycle. And the cop says, wait a second, I'm a cop, and starts to get off the motorcycle, and the guy shoots and kills him. That's it. Shoots and kills him. Cop falls over, the motorcycle falls over. He tries to pick the motorcycle up, and he can't because it's too heavy. In the meantime, there are 3 eyewitnesses to this. He left his fingerprints on the motorcycle, but he tried to pick it up. And I was able to find out where he got the gun from. And I was able to send detectives to a place where he hid the gun in a neighbor's apartment, and the neighbor gave it up right away. And when we arrested him, he confessed. And
So
then I got we had 3 witnesses. So
I mean, with the gun though, the eyewitnesses saw where he hit the gun after he shot?
No. That was he brought it to his mother's neighbor and hid it in his apartment, and we were able to trace it to. We were able to trace him and where he was because people knew something about him, So it wasn't as if we didn't know who he was. We did, but when we went to locate when we arrested him and we asked him where did he put the gun, he answered me. He said, I gave it to my friend. Told him to hide it in his apartment. We went to the apartment and the friend gave it up, said, yeah, here's the gun. He gave it to me. I brought the gun back. They brought the gun back to me in the precinct while I was sitting there with the defendant, and I took a shot. I said, I'm going to ask him if he can identify this gun. That would be the coup de grace, right? I mean, that's like the icing on the cake. And he said, yeah, that's the gun. So, Mike, in real life, this is the case. I had 3 eyewitnesses, all pick him out of a lineup. I had this guy who was his friend, who was the receiver of the gun. I had the gun. I had his fingerprints on the gun, and I had a confession in which he admits to it, and he identifies the gun. You know what happens? It's a hung jury in the first place. There are 2 African-American women on the jury. The guy's an African-American defendant. And at the end of the case, when it was 10-2 for conviction, the foreperson of the jury told me that those 2 women didn't even participate in the deliberations and said, we're not sending another young black guy to jail. Now, the police officer was African-American. His entire family sat in the first row every day of the trial, all of them, his 2 brothers, his mother and father. So it was the weirdest racial thing I had ever seen in my life, particularly in light of the evidence, the strength of the evidence. So judge said to me, Mr. Vecchione, when can you be ready with a retrial? I said, right now. I can start right now. So 2 weeks later, we tried a case. Jury comes back in 15 minutes with a conviction. So I use that. Now you can see how that would be perfect, a perfect kind of case for my book, in which the devil not only affects the fact that he's whispering in the ear of the killer that this is the guy you should rob, which he did. He also gets to the two jurors on a lunch break in the guise of a woman with a baby carriage, approaches these two jurors and talks them into finding this guy not guilty. Okay. So it was a perfect case to use for the devils for this my book. So Michael is very disappointed that he doesn't win, but he realizes what happens after he speaks to a couple of people who saw this woman talking to the two jurors, and he puts two and two together and knows that it's Satan who has done this. So what he does is he asks the judge to sequester the jury for the retrial, to put them in a hotel for the entire case, and he does that, and ultimately Michael wins the case. So the reason me telling you this is the idea is that the devil is in Brooklyn to incite chaos and incite anarchy, and to have, imagine an off-duty cop who, by the way, grew up in the neighborhood where he was killed. He was a hero in real life. He was a hero. So sorry.
What
And
year did this take place, Mike?
um
The cop getting killed.
yeah, probably like 93, 94, in that area.
Gotcha.
So that was that was one of the cases that I made sure that got into the book, and it also gave me the opportunity to. Oh, and so let me just finish where I was saying. I said Michael doesn't go unscathed, or people who help him in these cases don't go unscathed. This case in my book, after the jury finds him guilty, the foreperson is an African American woman. She stands up and reads the verdict and looks over at the family of the dead police officer, and it's the mother, the father, the brothers, and kind of nods like we did the right thing. Well, after this verdict, the foreperson leaves the courthouse, goes shopping in the book to buy a birthday present for her daughter. The courthouse in Brooklyn is in a downtown area where there are a lot of department stores. So she comes back after buying her gift, gets on the subway, and as the train is coming into the station, somebody passes her and pushes her in front of the subway train, and she's killed. So
And
the
this really
idea,
happened.
no. The
Oh, this
idea
did. Okay.
in the book, the idea is that the devil takes revenge on everybody connected to his losses, and that's what I've done. In another story, Michael's father is given medication by a doctor who says that he can help him when he's not even sick. He goes to a Veterans of Foreign Wars meeting, and he talks to all of the old guys there and says, I can help you with this, with that, the other thing, and need you to take this medicine. Well, Michael's father does, and it turns out it actually hurts him, and he winds up in the hospital and almost dies. And then when Michael goes to the hospital where this doctor was supposed to have given this medication, he walks in and they say to him, "Doctor who? We don't have any doctor like that. Never heard of that guy." So again, it's the devil.
That's
So
cool.
that's how the cases are laid out, how they develop, and it's always, I don't say always, because there's even another case where Michael loses, but he gets his revenge by taking care of the next case that comes up. So in book 2, let me just kind of finish this out. In book 2, there's a murder of a firefighter who comes to a location answers with his company a fire in a in the it's sort of a warehouse in the back of what would be like a Home Depot. And when they show up at the place, the fire is obviously raging, and the firefighters say to this guy who is outside, who called the fire department, "Is there anybody inside?" And he's with a buddy, a friend of his, and the buddy leans over and whispers in his ear, and the fire starter says, "Nah, yeah, there's a friend of ours. He's in there. I don't know where he is. We couldn't get out. Only two of us got out." Well, the whisperer was the devil. The fire starter tells that to the firefighters. They go in to a basically empty building, and the roof collapses and kills the firefighter. Now that's true. That's all true. They
Oh,
thought there was
wow.
someone in there. The roof collapsed, and Mike, he collapsed this way. The firefighter who died was in the middle. He didn't die by getting hit with debris. He died because the two pieces of the roof suffocated him. He was caught in the middle, and they couldn't get him out in time. So
So he didn't
the
die
devil,
instantly. He was
correct. He did not
suffocating
die
them.
instantly. They couldn't get him out fast enough, but he ultimately succumbed to his injuries. So to die, so he gets in real life, he dies on the way to the hospital, and I do the case, and it's a case that is not so easily kind of put into a category. The fire started because I'll call him the fire starter was cutting up stolen cars using this warehouse to cut up stolen cars, and he didn't really know what he was doing that well, and he spilled gasoline on the floor of the ground of the warehouse. And when the next day, when he was cutting up a piece of a car, the fumes ignited and set the place on fire. The fumes spread. They spread to the walls of the warehouse, and that caused the building to collapse. So, in my book, the fire marshals who are assigned to investigate the case find out all of this and find out that this is how the fire started, and they're able to put the case together, and we ultimately convict the fire starter. Now, in the devil is again PO'd. Nothing happens until at the end of that story, the two fire marshals who solved the case respond to a hotel fire in Manhattan. And they're told when they go there to figure out what started the fire, they're told on the floor that the fire began, it was safe for them to go and check out these cause and location of the fire. And when they walk into this hotel room, the floor collapses. Both of them fall to the floor below. One dies, one is paralyzed.
Hmm.
Those are the two. And that is the revenge, Satan's revenge, because they solved the case, the previous case. So it turns out that the whole book, that was kind of at the beginning, the first story in book two. And at the end of book two, they catch the fire starter. And he's in jail in Manhattan. But as it turns out, the Manhattan DA's office can't try the case because there's a conflict of interest. The DA's wife, her cousin, is the judge in the case, and they have to move the case to Brooklyn. And who gets assigned special prosecutor to try it in Brooklyn? But Gioka. And Gioka tries the case and convicts the devil's stooge, the fire starter, and sends him to jail. Okay? Here's where book three starts. Book three starts with the devil setting up an escape, a prison escape from this high security prison that the fire starter and another guy who killed a cop somewhere else in the state. And he sets up this escape so that these guys can get out and he can have his stooge back to do more mayhem. And that's where the book begins. And what he wants them to do when he gets them out is to kill more police officers. And he sets up a situation where he tells these two guys that they're going to rob a jewelry store, and that there are two cops who are in plain clothes who are stationed outside the jewelry store, but he doesn't tell the robber, the fire starter, and his buddy that they're there. So when they walk up to the front of the jewelry store to rob it, two cops come out from where they are stationed. There's a gunfight, and the two cops are shot and killed. That is a variation of a real case that I did, in which two prisoners from Attica State Prison came to Brooklyn and were there to set up a series of robberies with another one of their colleagues who had been in prison. And two cops come upon the scene, and both of them die. And I tried the case personally. So that's where book 3 starts. Then it develops another story that kind of flows into it, involving a phony minister who is fleecing people in Brooklyn and killing young women who he has sucked into his home to be his people who he sends out into the street to beg for money. And when they don't want to do it anymore, he doesn't just let them go. He kills them and brings them down to the basement of his house/church, and has a guy cut their bodies up and burn them alive, and burn the body parts. And he brings the remains upstate to a lake upstate New York and dumps the remains in a lake. That is also a real case in which this guy was, oh yeah. I can't tell you how many people, he was such a bad guy that he led this it was a cult, and he would suck these women in by promising them that he would take care of them for the rest of their lives. They didn't have to worry about working. They could live in his house. He would then rape them. He had 42 kids with these young women, and there were two sisters who he kind of enticed into his web. And then they realized what was going on, and they basically said, we're not doing this. And they stupidly mentioned going to the DA's office to report the guy. Guess what?
He never saw your fate.
Oh yeah, he killed them. He killed both of them. And the guy who he hired to chop the bodies up worked for the medical examiner's office. He knew how to, cut up bodies.
Oh, he knows. Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I had him as an informant, and he came in. I'll never forget this, Mike. He came in.
Oh, you had the actual guy get cutting up the bodies as an informant?
Yes. I had the investigation. When he came in, he said to me, he explained to me how he cut the bodies up and what he did with them, because we didn't have any idea what he did. We didn't know if he just, we didn't know. So it turns out that what he was doing was he filled an old bathtub with oil, cooking oil, and lit it from the bottom like a barbecue. And when the oil got hot enough, they would dump the body parts that had been taken. He had taken apart these young women and dumped the body parts into the oil and burnt it. Yeah, until they were pulverized. So here's what the guy said to me when he described it to me. He said, Mike, it was like watching chicken frying. It was like frying chicken. That was his statement. So you can see, Mike, why this also is a perfect case for the concept that I have of the devil in Brooklyn creating havoc. And
yeah, I'd say that qualifies it.
Yeah. And that case leads to another, and in about 1992-93 in Brooklyn, there was a series of riots in a Hasidic Jewish area, the Crown Heights riots, and it all started because a rabbi in his car coming back from, I don't know, a service or something, his driver wound up getting into an accident with a young black kid who was on a bicycle, and he hit the kid. The kid died. It was a total accident, but the neighborhood was like a tinderbox. It was ready to explode. The blacks didn't like the Jews. The Jews didn't like the blacks. They were always arguing and fighting. And this incident lit. It was like they lit a campfire, or they lit a fire to this thing, and literally the neighborhood was burnt, and literally they were turning over cars. They were killing. They were not killing. They were beating up Jews. The Jews were fighting back. It was horrific, horrific. And during this riot, a young rabbinical student from Australia was in the neighborhood, and he was not part of any of this stuff. He was just simply walking home from synagogue one night, and that one of those nights during the riot, and he was set upon by a group of black guys who killed him for no reason. And that case is, I changed it in my book to being a seminarian who comes to Brooklyn and is staying at a parish in Brooklyn, and the riot starts, and he gets set upon by the devil's minions, and he gets killed. So that's essentially the layout of what the books are about. And I have to tell you, Mike, I know it's going to sound like I'm bragging, but I really think that they're good. I think that the stories are good. I think that people will enjoy them, and the people who I know who have read them, and people who I've talked to who've read them, say that this is a great thing for an author. They say, I couldn't put the book down. It was like one of my friends who is critical about a lot of things. He's not somebody who would just tell me something to make me feel good. He said, Mike, I read the book in 2 nights. He said, that's how good it was. And that
Mike,
was
I
just
100%.
one.
I believe you 100%, and that's not bragging or anything. I mean, that's just telling the truth. I mean, and that's what your stuff. That's why I love your stuff so much, because he's right. It's like even whether I'm reading one of your projects or watching you on the ID channel or talking to you like this, you just, you know what I mean? I'm just stuck to it like glue. You can't put it down, and he's
Thank you.
absolutely right.
Listen, if you don't mind, I'd like to just hold up the what the book
Oh,
book 3
absolutely.
looks like. This is what I guess you can see it, right? Can you see it, Mike?
Yep. Yeah, we can see it, Fallen Angel.
Yeah,
And when we get done, I'd like you to send me a link, you know what I mean, to your
I will.
or I'll put the link and all that.
Well, it's in there. I sent you the media kit.
Yeah. When I've added, I'm saying I'll have it in the description and all that for the.
Okay, well, you could, but what I'm saying is you can open the media kit. All of this stuff is in there already. You already have this.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying I'm gonna put a link to where they can buy it too when I
Oh,
when I
okay.
add it
Okay.
on
Okay. Well, let me tell you
YouTube.
right now so that you know. Okay.
Okay.
It's first of all, it's obviously going to be available on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. It also is available on a site that is really favorable to me, because when you sell a book on Amazon, you don't necessarily get what the book is, what a person pays the book, pays for the book. Amazon takes their piece, and then the publisher takes a little piece, and you get the rest, right?
Yeah, that's
There's
why
a
I
site.
always just tagged your website.
Okay, well, there's a site, and my website it's on my website called shopbooksdirect.com. If you
Okay.
buy this book or any of my books on that shopbooksdirect.com, I get the purchase price. It comes directly to me. So it's advantageous to me to publicize Shop Books Direct. It makes sense for people if they have a choice. It's easy to, it's very easy to buy books from them. You just go online, order it, and send them pay for it, and then that's it, and you'll get the book.
No, that's
Or you
great.
can,
I'll put
yeah,
that there.
yeah.
Do they need a promo code or anything, or just
Nope,
buy your book and it
nope,
automatically goes to you?
nope. You go
Oh,
on Shop Books Direct. You can search for my name, and my the Fallen Angel books are on there, as well as the Sculptress, which is that ebook that you and I talked about at the
I
Grass.
love that one, Mike.
Yeah,
That one was
yeah.
awesome.
So,
Love that one.
that's where they are. But don't forget, it might be easier for people to use Amazon or Barnes and Noble, which is a big bookseller, or Walmart, or wherever books are sold. It'll be sold. It'll be available all over. All they got to do is just put it into Google, and it'll come up. So it'll be
Absolutely.
released Thursday. November 14th. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping we've had some discussions that there'll be a book 4. I've got a couple of other stories that I think will fit perfectly into this scenario of the devil, doing, instigating and creating the chaos that he has created. And Mike, I got to tell you, I'll give you a little hint. It's if you I don't know if you read Crooked Brooklyn, which is one of the first books I did. It's about my years as chief of the rackets division. The last chapter is a case that to this day I still can't believe has occurred. It was a defrocked dentist, and I say defrocked in that he lost his license because he was a junkie, and he fell asleep in the middle of a surgery in his office, and he lost his license, and he began buying bodies from nursing homes in Brooklyn because he wanted to harvest the bone and tissue from these bodies. Of course, when he asked permission, which is what the law says you have to do, they said, family members said no. So he decided to do it surreptitiously, paid off the funeral directors, got tipped off to when the funeral director had a body, he would send his people down there and they would cut the body up and take all the bone and tissue out of the body and then sew it back up. And to make it look good, what they did was they filled it with PVC pipe and garbage as well, and sewed it up. And then the funeral director would dress it and set it up for a wake. So that, to me, that whole story, it's a chapter in Crooked Brooklyn. There's a lot more to it. And since that time, I have met the guy's wife in real life. I've talked to her. I have gotten some information that I didn't know when I was involved in the investigation. And then, of course, it's a novel, so I can add some things and make it even more, horrific. So I want to use that as a basis for book 4 if I can do it. So I'm hoping that
Yeah.
publisher will go for it. So
Yeah.
what I need from your people is to make it so that she can't say no to publisher. You got to go out and buy the books and make
Absolutely.
make it so that she realizes that it would be worth her while if we do a book 4. So
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to push it every way I can. I'm going to even make a little thing. I'm going to post it on my Instagram and TikTok and stuff like
good.
that.
Thank
Like
you.
a little,
Thank you.
just a little picture of your book and stuff like that. A little ad
Good.
for you. Try
I
to get the
engaged
word out there.
I engaged a promoter, a book promoter, who's been working with me worked with me on The Sculptress, worked with me on the other 2 books, now, but not back when I was doing them. But he's worked with me on this one, and he's releasing a couple of trailers. In fact, one of the new trailers came out today. One was out last week. The new one came out today that he's posted everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, and the Shopbooks Direct address is prominently displayed in the trailer. So you won't have any trouble, or your listeners and viewers won't have any trouble finding it. So
Gotcha.
I encourage you to go. In addition to the entertainment you'll get out of it, it's I think you're helping
It's
me,
great.
but there's no reason. There's another reason. That's to help yourself. You'll enjoy yourself and enjoy reading it. Look, you read The Sculptress, right? So you you can tell everybody.
And Mike, I'm one of the I am an ADD guy. Like, man, I am not one that can sit there and read a book front to back. I will read the words, man, and it's gone. You know what I mean? Like I got to be doing something. You know what I mean? Like I'm more focused. I'm more focused riding a motorcycle. You know what I mean? Doing something,
I do.
adrenaline going. But like when I was reading The Sculptress, I couldn't stop reading it. And that's not like me. You know what I mean? I was into it. I mean, I was like, man, that's awesome.
Happy to hear it. Well, for
cool.
your listeners and your viewers, The Sculptress is an ebook. That means it's available on Amazon, and you can read it if you have either an e-reader or you get the app, the Kindle app, and you can read it on your computer, or you can read it on your iPad, your phone, etc. It's $2.99, which is not a heavy lift, and 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 you can read it in one sitting. If you're interested, you can read it in one sitting, and it's a true story. And it's Mike. You've read it, so it's one of these things that I don't think I could have made up if I wanted to, in terms of what this woman went through, what she was then put through by the DA's office, and ultimately how she came out at the end. And
It's one of those cases where you have such a hard time because if it went the wrong way, it's like such a miscarriage of justice, and like some of the laws, especially when it comes to self-defense, Mike, man, it's I know
yeah,
you're in New York, I'm in Delaware, which it ain't no better. But I mean, the self-defense laws are so crazy. I mean,
you're correct. But
like
Mike,
when someone breaks in your home and you shoot them dead, you might go to jail for murder. That's
yeah,
insane.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
in with regard to the sculptress, in regard to her, and the reason the title is because she was literally a sculptress, and this horrific event that occurred with this abusive husband of hers essentially took her ability to sculpt away from her. And I'm not going to explain why, because I think your people should get it. It's really a terrific story, in my opinion. And I think they'll enjoy it. And once again, it doesn't cost a lot, and it's also a quick read as far as being able
no,
to.
and for the people, I've read it, and I'm not even a big reader. I'm more of an audiobook guy for sure. And I sat right here and at my computer in one sitting and read it start to finish. It's great. It really
Well,
is.
as long as you mention audiobook, let me tell you, book one, Fallen Angel book one, is an audiobook and it's out. Fallen Angel book two is an audiobook and will be out very soon.
That's
I
awesome.
finished it. I'll be doing book
Oh,
three.
are you reading
I'm the
actually doing
narrator.
the
Yeah,
oh
yeah. I'm
awesome.
the
Awesome.
narrator. Book three I'll be doing book three. Homicide is My Business is an audio book. I did not narrate that one, and it's out. And Crooked Brooklyn is an audio book. Again, I didn't narrate that. That's also available as an audio book. Um, so if you are inclined or not so inclined to be a reader, if you're I'm talking to your listeners and viewers right now, then you can get my books as audiobooks. They're available, and book three in Fallen Angel series will be available. I haven't yet recorded it. I'm going to start more than likely as soon as November 14th passes. But and I'll give you a little, I'll give you a heads up when book two is out. I'll send you an email so that you can when that's out on audio, and you can maybe do me a solid and talk to your listeners and
You
readers.
know I will. You know I will. You got email me, text me,
I will.
whatever you want to do, and I'll push it. Anything
Yeah.
you got. You know that. I love it. Mike, I
Yep.
want to ask you a question. I meant to ask you the last time or time before we talked, because I find it very intriguing because it's not something that I could do. Like I said, of course, every individual has, strong traits of, that's individual to them. But you are a lawyer.
Yes.
What I don't understand is you've been a lawyer your whole life. Where you're so you're writing books like you've been an author, like you've been writing your whole life. You know what I mean? Like that's why I don't like you're like I'm like this guy. You know what I mean? Have you always wrote, like, is it a side hobby? Like when you were still before you retired, were you writing stuff on the side? What I mean, where did this come from?
You have the answer, and you mentioned it first. I've been an attorney for a long time. Okay. I
Right. So
have
I know
been,
you got to be able to write. You read,
I have been a trial attorney for all of that time. I have tried cases all of my life. And I have to, in each case, I have to write an opening statement and a closing argument. Okay. But so that's where the writing comes in. But the storytelling is what a trial is all about. I don't care what anybody tells you, Mike. If a lawyer can't tell a story effectively, the story is what his client, or how he represents his client, or if you're a prosecutor representing the person who is a victim, then he's not going to be successful. He's got to be a good, or she has got to be a good storyteller.
You know,
So
I
when you
equate it a lot to like telling jokes. You know how you got like that one guy that's just real good at telling jokes. He's always funny.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
another guy could tell the same joke, but he don't do it the way the other person does, and it's you'll laugh twice as hard at the other guy. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yes.
It's
I'll give you an example. When I was trying that case involving the young woman, the young girl who was killed on the Williamsburg Bridge. All right, horrific, horrific. I mean, think about this. It was so bad that when I went out to meet her father was a cobbler, shoemaker in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, which is a very heavy Hasidic area, Hasidic Jewish area. When I drove in there with a detective, it felt like I was driving into Warsaw, Poland. That's how it looked. And I had been in Brooklyn my entire life. And I walked into that store. He was a cobbler and he was working on a shoe. Now, my grandfather was a cobbler, so I know exactly what the store was about, what he was doing, and how he was doing it. And I walked in and introduced myself. The detective introduced himself. The guy never looked up, Mike, never looked up from what he was doing. He
really
was so upset and angry because of what happened to his daughter that he didn't want to have anything to do with us. Okay,
uh,
nothing.
mm.
So, actually, how did I get off onto this topic? I can't remember now. But the bottom line is, oh, I'll tell you how.
We were talking about
So, yeah. So we drove through Williamsburg about telling a story. I noticed a lot of things. There are a lot of young women who were pushing baby carriages and things of that nature. And when I summed up, I said to the jury, and this is where I'm talking about the effectiveness of your the way that you speak. And I wrote this before I said it. I said her name was Zipporah Yagadayev. That was the young girl's name. I said Zipporah. What this guy did meant that Zipporah would never receive her diploma at graduation. She would never walk down the aisle to get married. And she would never push a baby carriage through the streets of Williamsburg. And because of what he did, all we have left of her is this shoe, and I put it on the jury rail right in front of them, and this bra clasp, and I put the bra clasp down.
that's huge. That's good.
And
Yeah.
so that is, in another case, what I did, another woman was killed horrifically. I showed the jury, I had her picture. She was smiling. She was a student. She was a social worker. She was a model. And she had this great, beautiful picture of her with a big smile. And her dad was in the audience. I think I might have gotten it from her father during the course of the investigation. And I also had the picture of her on the morgue table. And what I
Mm.
said to the jury was, this guy turned this, and I held up the picture, the smiling picture, into this. She was on the morgue table with a hole right through her body. So my point is, Mike, that I feel that I can write because I've done writing, even though they're not books. I've done writing like this my entire career, and I feel that's why I'm comfortable doing, as you could probably figure, doing shows like this. I can tell a story,
Yeah.
and I love telling stories, and I think that I was effective as a trial lawyer. I'm not, again, not trying to brag. I'm just telling you fact. So
No,
that's
I said it, Mike. I've told my friends the very first show you and I ever done was the first one I did ever, and I was so nervous. And I was telling everybody, I said, but man, Mike, he makes it easy, man. I mean,
yeah.
he made it
Thank
so
you,
easy. I literally that's what I told my friends and
thank you,
family.
thank you.
And they
That's
said
what.
the same thing. They're like, man, that guy's great. I mean, I was like, yeah, he is.
Well, I really appreciate that, Mike. And
Yeah.
so the transition. Now, here's what you do have to learn. Here's what I did have to learn. There's a difference in writing a summation and different and than writing a book. I mean, you've got to. There's a technique for telling a long form story a story that is going to last 300 pages. You've got to be able to. First of all, you got to have a good memory because what I do is I make notes so that if I'm at, let's say, page 400 and I'm using this, and I'm referring to a character that was introduced on page 20, I've got to go back and say, okay, what did I say about that character on page 20 so I don't look like an ass when I write
Yeah.
about it, on page
Right.
400. So you got to have a good memory. But the idea, I find it easy to tell a story, and it has translated, thank God, into being able to get in front of this computer and write it the way I tell it. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes, I fully admit this, sometimes talking the way that I speak and the how I speak, I try to, I have to kind of temper that a little bit because it doesn't necessarily go well in a book. So,
Yeah.
for instance, if I use the term, let's say I'm gonna do this, right?
Oh,
So,
that would be terrible for me because I have like a little southern twang to the way I
okay.
talk. Oh, it would be terrible for me. I get it.
So
Yeah.
now it works if I am quoting a guy who's a character who speaks that way all the time. Then I have to write it that way. But I grew up in the streets. I was playing ball, I was hanging
Right.
out, I was doing all kinds of stuff. And Mike, you know this. There are things that you pick up, ways that you say things, way that
Yep.
the way that you refer to some
Yeah.
things that are hard to shake. And I sometimes find myself, I look down at or look at the computer and I say, "Oh shit, I can't say that.
Yeah.
I gotta
Yeah.
do it differently."
Yeah.
So that is where it was somewhat tough. I have a sense now, and I really feel a lot more comfortable sitting down and doing what I'm doing. So, Mike, I'm doing my 11th book. This will be the one that I'm doing about my friend, the detective who became a prison minister. That's the story that I'm writing now. Will be the 11th book. 3 of them are these ebooks that I did, but the rest are all, a full-length books. So,
And Mike, that's amazing. Some people, whatever job they do, and when they retire and they work many years, most of their life, and they want to write one book.
one
You know
book.
what I
I know.
mean? One book. You know what I mean? You wrote 11.
I
And I'm telling you, it's like wha- it is the hardest part getting started because I would feel like if I said
oh,
tomorrow, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. I sit down
yep.
on my computer, Mike, I wouldn't know where to start.
That's the key. But Mike, here's the thing. Again, talk about learning from the past. That's the way it was with every summation I ever did. Where am I going to start? I know what I want to say. I
Uh,
know what I have to do.
right.
Where do I start? Once I sit and I get that first paragraph, I'm
Off
off
to
to
the
the
races.
races. I
Yeah.
finish it. And
I
you know what I
remember
did?
even in school writing like essays.
Essays. Yeah.
It's trying to start. Like it was just like, and then like once I got a groove, I can kind of BS my way. You know
Right.
what I mean? Kind
You
of
know,
make it
you,
happen. But
I tell you how long I've been doing this. When I started trying cases, particularly in earnest, when I got into the homicide bureau for the first time in the DA's office, and I used to drive back and forth from my home in Eastern Queens, New York, into Brooklyn, and I had a lot of time, a lot of traffic, so I had a lot of time to think. And when I was on trial, one other thing, same vein, I used to work out every night in my garage. I had exercise equipment out there. And my sons even used to say it. I remember they were at lunch. I'm sorry, at dinner with my dad one time, and they said, this guy works out and he's thinking and writing. He's got a pad next to his one of the machines that he works on. And I used to think and come up with things that I needed to say or I wanted to use, that kind of thing. So I would have a pad full of stuff. As time went on, and you could get I used to call my answering machine. That's how long ago this was. And I would be in the car, or I would get on, I'd be somewhere and I would find a phone and I'd call my answering machine and I would talk into the answering machine and
make
lay out
yourself a note.
exactly what I wanted to say, how I want to say it. Now, what I do is, it's hard to break a habit. I can be asleep and in the middle of writing a book, and I have awakened, and I have this, this thing comes to me. It's great passage or this way of handling a problem. And I wake up, I get my phone, or if my iPad is next to me, and now I just tap it out on the phone. I don't even talk in anymore. I can write it a lot faster than I can, I can say it and think about it. So the idea is, I guess I started by saying that writing has come to me as a result of the the foundation that was laid when I was on trial most of my career. I loved trying cases. The one thing I miss about my career and my past career is exactly that. I used to I belonged in a courtroom. And I'm going to tell you something. I had some issues that I went to speak to a psychologist once about some things that were going on, and I'll never forget this. He said to me, "Where are you most comfortable in your life?" And I said to him, honestly, I said, in a courtroom.
Yeah. You see,
At
where
that,
most people would be scared, you know what I mean, and
yeah,
nervous. But
not me.
and that's
I
where you're
loved it.
different, you
I
know.
loved it. And the more people in the courtroom, the more spectators, the better it was for me. I just
Let me tell you one thing that I bet you why you were so good as a prosecutor. This is just me, all right? So okay, I'm trying to say this as respectfully as I can
no, please
to any
just
other
say it.
to any other prosecutor. So you just the way you come off, I believe you. You're a genuine guy. You're a stand-up guy. I'm a pretty good judge of character. So if I'm sitting on that jury, let me tell you one thing I can't stand is an overzealous like prosecutor that has like that mean woman look with the short hair that you could tell she just looks like she's not happy in her life, and all she wants, she don't give a shit if she knows damn well you're innocent. She just wants that check mark by her name to throw your ass in jail. That's one thing I can't stand.
That's
And there
not
are
me.
prosecutors like that, and
Yep,
I've
there
seen them
are.
on TV and stuff like that, and I'm like, how do you even sleep at night? You know this is a bullshit case. You know it, dude. You know what I mean?
Mike,
And
I've seen
that's
him in
not
real.
you.
I've seen him in real life. Listen, go back to the sculptress. Do you think that the DA's office did the right thing by that young woman by locking her up and indicting her for murder? For
That's why
murder?
I would have a hard time doing your job sometimes, Mike, honestly.
It was thank I say to myself now, and I and
Is for injustices like that. You
yeah,
know what I
and
mean?
I got to tell you, Mike, I had that story obviously for many, many years. I tried that case in 1991. That story has been in my head for all of these years. I have tried loads of cases since then. I've handled tons of investigations. I've done big cases. I've done cases that, I've appeared on TV because of it. I've done television. I've done a bunch of stuff. I never forgot that case. And I'm sitting
Yeah.
exactly where I'm sitting right now one day. And I said, you know what?
It's
It's time.
terrifying, Mike. It could be your family member, could be
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
cousin, your
Absolutely.
sister, your daughter, or your, anybody.
And I said, I have to write this story. I looked for her. I thought the ending.
I know. We talked about
Did
that
I tell
last
you
time.
that? Yeah.
I want you to find her, man.
You
That would
know,
be awesome.
and the guy, the prosecutor I tried it against was a guy that worked for me when I went back to the DA's office and was the chief of the homicide bureau. He was a prosecutor in the office. Now I don't blame him because I blame the people who he responded to or he reported to. There was no reason whatsoever that they had to try her. They had to even lock her up. Never mind, try her, lock her up. She should have never been locked up, but she was charged with murder. I could not believe it. I could
Hey,
not.
how about and I'm not trying to just keep you long, Mike. I know you got stuff you got to do, but while we're on the topic, have you heard anything about this Menendez brothers case?
Yeah, yeah,
To tell
yeah.
you,
I
that's
have.
a tough one, Mike. I don't know where you're at on it, but I'm going to tell you I think he's sending them boys home. I think that their parents put them boys through hell. I'm not saying you walk in and blow your parents' heads off. That's
That's the
very
point, Mike.
crazy. What's that?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. They could be the worst parents in the world.
Right, you
The
can't
two,
go in there and blow their heads off,
yeah,
and that's
uh,
crazy, or whatever. But I don't think they should necessarily die in jail, because I definitely believe, especially with the new guy that came out and said that his dad had drugged and raped him. There's a guy that
You
come
believe?
forward.
Okay, here's my thing, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second.
Right, right.
Do you
It's a hard. It is hard. I mean,
okay?
it's a tough one.
Number one, do you believe that guy? Number two, did someone get to him so that he could then make up that story?
Of
And
course.
so those are the factors that now, even if Mike, somebody did do what they claim the father did, you hit it right on the head. You don't have the right to
To blow
go
their head
in
off.
and just find these
No,
people, blow their head off. It's not the way to do it.
no.
There's a big difference between that and what my lady sculptress.
Oh, totally different. Yeah, I wasn't trying to compare him at all. I just
No,
thought of
no, I
that was
understand.
going
I
on. Yeah.
understand. So,
But yeah, that's a tough one. But yeah, but I mean, that I definitely, no, you definitely can't. But I think once you do 30, 35 years, if you were abused and raped every day and living through hell, I mean, it's a tough one. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you can't blow their head off. You know what I mean? You
no,
can't.
you can't. You can't. There are
It's just
places
not.
they could have gone to, help for help, and they didn't do it. But hey,
I can
look,
see maybe beating the shit out of them, but
yeah, the
blowing your head off, that's
prosecutor. I
different.
read a story today. Actually, the prosecutor who tried the case is now, left the DA's office. She retired, I think, and she is
Yeah.
adamant that these two people, the Menendez brothers, were savages, and what they did to their
Is that
parents. And
right? And see, that might be true. You know what I mean? We
yeah,
don't get all the story, so
no, we don't. We don't. It's just
well,
it's a Listen, I've been on the side of having stones thrown at me for prosecuting people, and I've been on the side of having stones thrown at me for defending people who people
yeah,
think should be defended, and vice versa. So
yeah.
it's a tough world. And as long as this, I'll give you something. I'll leave you with this. My father said something to me when I first began in the DA's office. He said, Michael, always do the right thing.
That's
And
it.
if you do the right thing, then you don't have anything to worry about.
That's
And
why I said, Mike, and that's why you did so good well in the courtroom. You're believable. You're a stand-up guy. You know what I mean? And I could
yeah,
that's the way you come off. You just, I'm like, this guy, this guy's not feeding me a line of bullshit. You know what I mean? And I think that's just why you're so good at what you
well,
did.
thank you very much, Mike. Thank you. So
Sure.
we've done it's been a long time. So I
Yeah.
guess we can
Yeah, we'll wrap it up there,
wrap it
Mike. I
up.
thank you so much for coming on. And like always, I'll send you out an email and stuff when I go to post it up. And
Thank you. And I will post it. And just let me leave you with this Fallen Angel 3. And the subtitle is Anarchy, Chaos, Peace with a question mark. That is my little message to my publisher that perhaps there should be a book 4. The devil has not gone away. So
right.
that's what
Awesome.
so we'll see. So Fallen Angel
Awesome.
3, it'll be out on November 14th. Fallen Angel 1, Fallen Angel 2, both one has the audio book out. Book 2 will be coming out. I've already finished it. It's already been edited. It should be coming out soon, as well as the print versions. So that's it.
Awesome.
Michael, thank you very much,
Sounds
buddy,
great.
for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much, Mike. I'll be in touch.
And take care of
Uh,
yourself.
you too, buddy. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Take care.